During the 1920s, often called the Roaring Twenties, the US economy had an unexpected economic boom. Things such as electricity, radio, telephones, and cars were being produced for the masses. There was mass production in the manufacturing, telecommunications, movie, and chemical sectors. Infrastructure was being built to support all of these new technologies. Much of the population moved into the cities to acquire jobs in these industries. Americans found themselves with ever-increasing amounts of dollars to spend, which was then invested in the stock market. The Great Depression did not affect everyone the same way. Many rich people felt no impact at all and were oblivious to the suffering of others. Up to 40% of the country never faced real hardship during those years, but most were touched by it in some way.
The Great Depression increased the crime rate as many unemployed workers started shoplifting to put food on the table. Suicide rates rose and it reported cases of malnutrition. Prostitution was on the rise and desperate women sought ways to pay the bills. Healthcare in general was not a priority for many Americans, as visiting the doctor was reserved for only the direst of circumstances. Cigar smoking became too expensive, so many Americans switched to cheaper cigarettes. Alcoholism increased with Americans as an escape.
The Depression changed the families in dramatic ways. Many couples delayed marriage. The divorce rate dropped sharply since it was too expensive to pay the legal fees and support two households. Higher education remained out of reach for most Americans as the nation's universities saw their student bodies shrink during the first half of the decade. Birth rates fell sharply, especially during the lowest points of the Depression. More and more Americans learned about birth control to avoid the added expenses of unexpected children.
Anyone who had even a little money was extremely lucky. A new home could be bought for less than $3,000. A man's suit cost about $10, a pair of shoes about $4, and a shirt less than 50 cents. Even though you could purchase a lot for a small amount of money, not many lucky enough to be working had much change to spend after paying rent and buying food.
Many people lost their jobs and the Great Depression had hit America. There were a lot of impressions which inspired many authors to write about what was happening in America. One of them was Scott Fitzgerald.
Francis Scott K. Fitzgerald was born in St. Paul, Minnesota, the 24th of September 1896.
He grew up and began studying at Princeton to become an educated writer and worked simultaneously as a journalist. Since the school was so demanding, he was unable to continue his education and he was forced to withdraw in 1917, so instead he joined the army. A year later, he met his future wife Zelda Sawyer, who was daughter of a successful court judge. To prove that he deserved her, he rewrote a novel he had begun at Princeton, This Side of Paradise, and it was published in 1920, and then Scott and Zelda were married.
In 1924, they moved to the French Riviera. After a year in France, he completed his greatest work, The Great Gatsby.
Another famous author who was inspired by this era and how it affected the people and the society was John Steinbeck.
John Steinbeck, born on February 27, 1902 in Salinas, California.
He was an American writer who won the Nobel Prize for Literature and the Pulitzer Prize for his book, The Grapes of Wrath, 1939. John Steinbeck wrote profoundly about the economic problems faced by the rural class during the Great Depression.
Steinbeck attended Stanford University at 1920 and 1926, but did not earn a degree.
He spent much of his life in California's Monterey Country. The novel of Mice and Men, 1937, is a tragic story about the strange complex bond between two immigrant laborers. George Milton and Lenny Small moved from place to place in search of new job opportunities, considering to the lack of work during the Great Depression. Steinbeck died in New York City in 1968.
The Great Depression has not only brought the world misery, but it has also brought the world great novels from great writers. Thank you, Fitzgerald, and thank you, Joan Steinbeck, for your amazing work of art. We love you.